Mentoring is a partnership. Success of that relationship is based on both people asking great questions, telling great stories, and this video will show you how to do exactly that so you can get better results for everyone involved and stay in touch after that all-important first or second meeting. Hello, we're here for 8 unedited minutes about mentoring with Jake Munoz, proud Loyola alum, champion of the mentoring program, and vice president at Goldman Sachs. Thank you so much for being here, Jake.
Happy to be here. Thanks for asking me.
I would love to jump right in. On our last conversation, you had a really unique perspective on mentoring, that it's not a one-way street and it's a partnership and both parties have a responsibility for that relationship. Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess my mentorship tenure here at Loyola has been approximately 5 years now. So I've had a good number of opportunities meeting with current students and getting to know more about them and what it is they're looking for. So what I think about two-way street, I guess what I'm trying to get at is, in some respects, you get out of it what you put into it. And so I think it's important to level set at your first meeting what it is that student's goals and aspirations are. Sometimes they'll come in and they'll sit down and say, I'm considering changing a major, or I don't know what to do for a first internship, or I'm not sure if this is the right career for me. And so understanding what they need helps you tailor your history to what's most important to them.
And how about the responsibility of the student or the mentee?
Yeah, so on that perspective, I guess you need to ask the right questions. It's more than just coming to a coffee to meet with your mentor and having the mentor drone on and on and on and on about what they did. Because what they did is, I think it's great and it's good background information, but really you want them to draw on their experiences and impart that to the mentee. So it's up to the mentee to ask questions that they need the answers to maybe change what it is that they're trying to do in their 4-year track.
What's one tip for asking better questions, other than how do I find a job? What have you heard or asked yourself?
That's probably a pretty popular question. I'm looking for a job. Where do you recommend I start? I think maybe a better question to ask for a mentee is, if you were in my shoes today, how would you approach question X, Y, or Z? Or maybe another way to go about that would be, here's an issue I'm having, or maybe I'd just rewind that. I guess I'd say, if you were to do it over again, what would you do differently? I think is always really interesting for a mentee to understand.
Okay, for them to ask the mentor.
Yeah, sorry, the mentee would ask me that question.
Once the ice is broken and you have that first meeting, how can people keep a relationship going so it's not too super structured, but also it goes beyond, okay, I had a coffee meeting, I got amazing advice. And I hear that a lot from students. What do I do next? What would you say to carry it on without just help me?
I would say just infrequent postings. So what I mean by posting is, I think the goal is to make sure that you're not necessarily on the forefront of mind of the mentor, but you're always kind of hanging in the back, right? So when the mentor comes across maybe a job posting that they think you might fit for, their name goes to you. And so whether that's an email that you drop the mentor once a quarter, just say, taking a new class, really interesting, and I could draw a parallel to what we talked about in one of the meetings. That's really helpful. Social media, there's a lot of different ways to do it. So if you don't want to do email, you could always do LinkedIn or something like that. I find is non-intrusive and easy to do.
With LinkedIn following up or just liking a status update?
Right, you could send a LinkedIn message, you could like something, you should comment on something, any which way where you can just kind of insert your name into the mentee's day, right? Just to refresh in their memory that you still exist.
So what you're saying, the email or the like or a comment, it's just getting that to come across. So there's an internship and they're not necessarily thinking, I need to call Jake, but it's that moment of, that's right, Jake.
Yeah,
at the right moment in time.
Right. I think you're capturing that.
Got it. And once you also mentioned a lot about networking and finding a common ground, because so many people, how can I find mentors? How can I get a job? How can I anything? How networking and relationships are important. And you had mentioned 2 or 3 common grounds and a unique take on student organizations. Can you talk a little bit more about that, why it's important to be part of groups like that?
Yeah, I think students that are looking for a career in business, networking is particularly important because client activity or just volume of transactions is usually what business is about in some respects. So the more people you know, the more helpful it is to you.
Okay.
So when I think about mentoring, you want it to be friendly more so than just a business mentorship, right?
Talk more about that.
I guess what I'm getting at is, as a student, you're in a unique position where you can contact almost anybody you want under the guise of, I'm a student looking for more information on a certain type of a career path.
Okay.
And you thought this person was particularly relevant to talk to because you saw their biography and it aligns well with what they want to do. People are usually willing to talk to students about that type of a thing.
Okay.
Versus, let's say you flash forward, you graduate, and now you're in your first job and you contact a person for something similar. They might question, well, why are you contacting me? You're just trying to sell me something. So as a student, no one's going to think you're trying to sell anything because
you have something to sell.
it's more, I would say it's more innocent, the reason for the contact.
And with student organizations and following up, if someone does want to start reaching out to more people for the networking side of jobs, what would you say for that? So it's not, here's my resume, give me a job. Where would that starting point be? Because it can be so tough of, I want to network and I need to find a job, but at the same time, I don't want to be pushy. What would you suggest for students as that icebreaker getting started there?
Yeah, I think you touched on it when you said look for a commonality. Mm-hmm. So there's always things like, if they went to the same school, that's the easiest, right? One loyal alum to a current Loyola student is kind of the gold standard. Okay. But if you don't have that, maybe you're looking for something like, I was an intern at this company used to do business with your company. Let's talk about that.
Oh, gotcha.
Or I once had a friend who worked at this company, he knew such and such person, and we had the opportunity to meet. It seems like you had a really unique culture. Tell me about your culture. Just any which way you can find an angle to talk about something without coming off self-serving, I guess is the goal.
So it sounds like it's also staying in touch with those people. I mean, how do you stay in touch? You mentioned with the mentors,
kind of the same. It's kind of the same thing. So as a mentor would post, as a mentee would post their mentor on their daily, or not daily, but their periodic updates of their career or their school experience. You can do the same in the kind of the realm of networking, right? So if you see an article on something that is relevant maybe to the person you had coffee with 6 months ago, you can shoot it over and say, hey, I remember when we were talking about XYZ, this is pretty relevant, look what was just posted in the Wall Street Journal.
Oh, okay, so it's not just, hey, help me.
Yeah, you're trying to jog their memory a little bit that you exist, and also provide them something that's maybe thought-provoking or interesting. That way it's not just a one-way street of you consuming information, but you're also providing information. Sometimes I find if you're dealing with someone who's maybe a bit more reserved or quiet and you want to get them to start to talk, share something about yourself first. So kind of open the door a little bit, make them comfortable, and then you'll probably end up with a good back and forth. And
the conversation started.
Right.
To close out, what would you say, for top of mind or most important to you, one reason you think anyone should become a mentor?
It's a pretty rewarding experience to interact with people that are currently students, because if you're in the same corporate position for year after year after year, eventually things get maybe a flat line or more mundane, and maybe you lose a little excitement. I find that when you reconnect with students, your own excitement about what it is that you do is elevated, because you see this young person who wants nothing more than to try and learn from you so that maybe they can someday do what you're doing. And so you see that and you say, wow, you know what, actually I really do like my job.
That's a pretty good reason.
It's an interesting dynamic, but it's helpful.
Thank you very much for being here, Jake.
Yeah, it was a pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely.